John Davis Northwest Patients Resource Center. John Davis has been running NWPRC for 8 years, as you can hear in episodes 1896 and 103. He's ensured that he's done precisely what the Washington regulations have demanded by literally reading every line of every published document, going as far as memorizing parts and sections of legislation. Welcome to Cannabis Economy. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and our new YouTube channel with the handle Can Economy. That's two N's in the word economy. We've got the new Cannabis Economy app in iTunes. You can get us through the iTunes podcast app and Google Play. Of course, happy to be on Cannabis Radio Network and the Sexpot Comedy Co-op. Washington is going through yet another sea change in advance of July 1st, 2016, and John is trying to figure out if he's swimming with or against the tide. Here's an overview of what's happening with John in 2 parts. Okay, so I'm on the phone with John Davis moments ago, and he says, well, what's happening here is you wouldn't believe it. And I said, well, John, let's actually talk about it. And let's record that conversation. And John said, what did John say, John?
I said, let's do it, of course.
All right. So thank you. You are our first 3-time guest. Thank you so much.
Oh, glad to be here, as always.
And I, as I say that, I realize we also did a tour with you. And so you are our first 4-time guest.
Oh, nice.
So you're 2 ahead of everybody else. What the hell is going on in Washington State, damn it?
Well, that's a good question. That's kind of the question on everyone's mind. I mean, it's kind of going down right now, but the licensing process, at least on the retail, is devolving into several actual lawsuits that are challenging what's going the actual process that went down. And as I'm looking into it, I mean, it's messier and messier. I mean, it's really messy.
So let's just take a minute to kind of catch up to where we were. So we were. They asked everybody to kind of redo it. Is that fair? Is that a fair thing to say?
Who asked?
Yeah, the Liquor and Control Board, the Liquor and Cannabis Board, excuse me, asked everyone to kind of redo licenses in advance of July 1st of 2016, correct?
Well, the medical, what the legislature did is they ended basically unlicensed, license from the Liquor Control Board, unlicensed medical retail, and basically said, okay, but you've got till July 1st of this year to move over, and we're going to give you preferential treatment. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you guys get licenses, and that was
right.
The deal that was struck through the legislature. But the Liquor and Cannabis Board, when they did it, they thought that they had the authority basically to just open it up and say, well, okay, so everyone's going to get a license, including the medical. If you want a license, apply, and we'll give you a license. So their plan was to open it up very widely. And I actually commented on that and said, wow, that's a stunningly horrible idea. But they didn't
Doesn't
listen
that
to me.
sound like the lottery that they had to begin with that started this as an issue at the start?
No, because it wasn't a lottery. What they're saying is, if you're ready to open up, just open up. But what that did, one, it's like the medical people were like, okay, well, you sure you're going to, include us? And but what really happened was the localities. I mean, this is the notion of legalization, even in Washington, is pretty new. And a lot of the localities said, what? You're just, if someone wants to get a cannabis license, you're going to just give it to them, and, we'll just have nothing but pot shops in our town. And
right.
So a lot of hysteria was going down. But the licensing process had already started. And after the licensing process started, there was actual written things from the Liquor and Cannabis Board saying, hey, there's no rush here. This isn't a race. Wait until you're ready, and then apply. This isn't a race. Don't worry. And then come, everyone, and that process started. on October 12th at 8 in the morning when BLS opened. And of course, so I'm standing in line at the door of BLS at 8 o'clock in the morning on October 12th saying, what do you mean it's not a race? I've worked with you guys before.
Of course it's a race.
Right. And so what happened was on December 16th, and there are, of course, a number of things happening behind the scene, but and it was also pointed out to them that they didn't have the legal authority to do what they were doing, which I think was the final straw. So on December 16th, they announced that they were capping each locality, and the caps were pretty low. Like, basically what they did was in most of the localities that didn't have a moratoria, they roughly doubled the number of applicants. But, by the time they did that, there was already, 800 applicants. Right? So overall in the state, it brought the number, it's in the, I think, 380 something. And there's 200 and change that were already open.
Oh my,
but
okay.
So all of a sudden, and they didn't even really announce it. They just said, hey, we're limiting licenses here. Well, based on what now? So what the legislature had said is you're supposed to give priority to those people that, had dispensaries before. They wanted to move the dispensaries over. But
Sure.
what the Liquor and Cannabis Board did was they created this, what's called priority system, and it ranks you as priority 1, 2, or 3, right? And
Right.
initially they were saying, well, we'll get to everyone eventually, but we'll get to all priority 1s before we get to priority 2s. Well, not everyone in Washington State is as honest as the next person in Washington State. So there was a lot of gaming the system. The litmus for priority 1 status is you applied for a retail license in the last round for the Liquor and Cannabis Board. You had operated or were employed by a collective garden prior to 2013. You had a history of paying all applicable taxes, and you had a history of holding all relevant business license. Those were the 4 criteria.
Okay.
So people realized, well, it says, operated or were employed by. So that's interesting. So what people started doing, especially as people started to see that there may be writing on the wall and these things may be capped, and some of them, some of the real, let's call them artful people to
Sure.
begin with, knew that, their best friend was time. Like the LCB was telling everyone else this isn't a race, but if they could get a license, quickly, that might be better than, waiting. So
Waiting, exactly. Yeah.
So what they did was, there are people, and I actually was just going through when you called and doing a study on the business licenses and when the businesses that applied were formed. And it's stunning how many of the business entities were formed in October of last year.
Last year being 3 months ago.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And so what they did was they, formed brand new entities and said, okay, well, we've got a guy that washed a toilet in a collective garden in 2012. So he's part of our application. And this guy over here owns 1% of our company, and he applied in the last round as a retailer, so we're priority 1. And it's like, well, what about your taxes? Well, we've never sold anything, so we don't have any taxes.
Yeah, we're all up to date on that.
Right, yeah. You gotta you have all relevant business licenses. Yeah, we got a master business license from the state. That's the only license. We're not in the locality. So what you had, and the LCB was processing these. They were processing them priority 1 as if they were an open dispenser. And because the LCB never even checked to see if the address that they had, it turns out, even existed, right? We have one instance where someone applied literally on a taco truck, and several other where the what they were applying on doesn't even exist.
Right. Now, we've talked to before about, back in the day, you had to have a mobile kitchen if you were kind of doing edibles, but this is a completely different situation here.
Yeah, yeah. So the it mattered when you got your designation of priority, and they were given priority based on the assumption that it didn't really matter anyways. So they were pretty loose, especially in the beginning, about assigning priority. So if you were a really good artful person, you had your crap together and you had your questionable company with your various elements in it ready to go, and you were quick, right? And these things got processed and jammed up in the system. And like the real dispensers that are out here are like, okay, well, I guess we take our time and we look at this, and we're taking the advice of the Liquor and Cannabis Board, which I don't recommend to your blogging audience. But by the time the cap was put on, the system was already full of garbage, right? And
Sure.
okay, to put it into perspective, the city of Seattle was given 21 additional licenses. However, because of lawsuits being settled in the meantime, the number of existing was 27, not 21. It was originally 21, but by the time they upped it to 42, they had 27. So there were only 15 slots in the city of Seattle, and the city of Seattle had recently gone and cleaned house, and they closed 60 dispensaries, basically for noncompliance.
Okay.
But they left 48 open.
Right.
That they said, hey, these guys are the priority ones. We checked.
Sure.
48 and 15 slots, right?
Oh, and these are actually opened dispensaries.
And these are actual dispensaries. I did this. It's hilarious. I'll send it over to you. I did this study of the addresses of the initial places because you don't have any information about this. But I do have their address, so I could use Google Earth to try to figure out who the hell they are, and it really is. I mean, you go through and there's very few. I mean, you go into Google, to Google Street View, and you can see they're not dispensaries, but the Liquor and Cannabis Board never checked. So now you've got 48 stores vying for 15 slots that are largely already clogged up in the system by entities that don't exist.
Right.
And so, and I'm just waiting for the letter. I was told by the state on, what is it, January 28th, that
Okay.
it was...
And I'm talking to you February 5th
Yeah.
of 2016. Go
Right.
on.
And they told me it was closed, that Seattle was closed. There were if you didn't have a license at this point, you're not getting one. And so...
But I thought you should take your time, John.
Well, yeah, if you see, and that's
It's
the
not a
problem.
race, John.
If you took your time, and there were also dispensers out here that when in the last round they said, hey, I'm not applying for a retail because I'm medical and I have patients to serve, so they didn't apply, so they're priority 2 to begin with. So there's a lot, and this is going to become a story at some point, because right now it's only localized in the city of Seattle, and the official letter that says it's closed hasn't come out, but it's a matter of record. I mean, you can search it, that lawsuits are going out. But it's going to roll.
Is that what happened to Jeremy and Ben? Did I hear about that, the CPC?
Yeah. That's exactly what happened to Jeremy and Ben. They didn't apply on the last round.
Right. Because they didn't think that they needed to, but it turns out they did.
Well, yeah, they didn't. Well, they didn't want to stop. If you went retail, what they do is very specialized, right? They do a lot
Yeah.
of oils, work with a lot of sick people that have various from Gervais to cancers to that sort of thing, and
Center for
they're
Palliative Care. Yeah,
Center for
exactly.
Palliative Care.
Right.
So they were like, "Well, I'm not applying for retail because if we became retail, we couldn't work with the sick and dying that is our client base.
Right. We don't have the right dosage. We don't. It goes
Well,
on and on.
they couldn't make it for themselves. They can't be a producer, processor, and a retailer. So
Right.
they didn't apply. So yeah, that's what Jeremy's complaint is about. And as I say, there's so many brand new entities that have just clogged up the system. But you're going to see the story's going to start breaking because the deal is now they're supposed to send out this letter. They're supposed to send it out this Monday. Now I checked with them. They said they're going to send it out next Monday. That
Okay.
says, okay, Seattle applicant, you have 30 days to find an address outside the city of Seattle, which the
Right.
people that are built out isn't really an option because they already exist. They can't jack their building up and drop it someplace else, right?
Right.
But, and right now, I out here at this time that I'm talking to you, I can almost feel the smoke coming from Olympia. I talked to my investigator today in the Liquor and Cannabis Board, and there's some political crap going down.
What? How much can you tell me on that? What do you mean?
Well, I know that there's been discussions about saying, okay, applicants in Seattle, you're not harmed because you can go someplace else and you're guaranteed a license. You're going to get a license, right? However,
Just as long as you move your entire life and business.
yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Which
Right.
is still not, but they're saying, well, but you're guaranteed. Well, yeah, but okay, so the city of Seattle, the people that, and this includes some of the scammers. Did I say scammers? Some of the artful.
Artful. Right. That was the word we wanted.
That
Yes.
have been, so they're saying, okay, sweet, guaranteed license. They're going to descend on other places, and when those places, they have caps too. When those caps are met, you're going to see the localities and places like Olympia's closed. Pierce County at large is closed. We're trying to figure out what the status of King County at large is. But there's a number of these localities that are closed. So you're going to see a tightening up where everyone's just rushing to get, a place in Umatilla, right?
Anywhere. Right.
Anywhere, right?
So, but
and
let's
it's
go
gonna
back to the
displace
fact.
people.
But let's go back to the fact because that is it sounds unsolvable, and we're waiting for the letter to come out on Monday, and we'll see what happens there. Let's go back to the fact that you're waiting on the doorstep on the first day with your application, and John Davis is being John Davis about it. What happened with you?
What happened with me? I will be upfront and say I am a party to a lawsuit myself because
Aha.
they, I was at the door 8 o'clock in the morning. When it opened, I was one of the first applicants. But what happened? they took my they took my application in, and they entered the wrong data somehow. They got the wrong contact information in for my application, so they weren't sending it to me. And you have to get the DocuSign email in order to access the DocuSign system.
Right.
So they just weren't sending me my stuff, and and I kept calling them and saying, hey,
Right.
like, I was one of the first people here. Where's my stuff? Where's my stuff? And they're like, hey, please be patient. This isn't a rush. We're very busy down here. We're going to get to you. We're going to
Sure.
get to you.
Right.
And finally, I called someone in a high position in that office, and who's at least used to be a friend of mine.
We'll see. Right.
And said, hey, what's going on? Where's my priority submission? Which,
Right.
by the way, I gave my priority submission day one because that's what I do. Because
Right.
I can read the law, and I knew what was it was supposed to be. So I gave it to him for the first day, the first hour of the first day, and they finally he figured it out that they were actually sending my stuff to the wrong place. So, so and there's still no information out there at this point. So I'm like, damn, and I get my priority submission in the next. They send me the DocuSign to me this time, and I get my DocuSign in like right away.
Right. Which is how many days, weeks, or months later?
This was here. Let me look at my priority. December 11th, I was issued my priority.
All right, so that's roughly 3 months later. October, November, December, right?
Yeah.
Or 2 months.
Yeah,
2 months after you, right, 2 months later.
2 months later, yeah. And so, like, they gave me they had never, I'm prepared. They had, I'm sure, never seen submission like that, a priority submission like that, because like I've paid all my taxes, everything since day one. Like
sure.
I pioneered.
They had also never seen a submission like that because yours was the first one.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't bother to look at it the first time, but then they did issue me my priority. Like it was a day later, or 2 days later.
Okay, so you have the priority. You have it.
Yeah, and then it goes into the system, and I'm, calling. Hey, where's my stuff? In the time between that and my next submission, and then they come back. My next submission, it turns out, is I need to submit my address. I'm like, I also submitted my address day one, right? So I was going through this. In that time, I've been shuffled around, and I've had 5 different investigators for the Liquor and Cannabis Board. And so right now, I'm at the end of the process, and I'm on the lawsuit. I'm trying to resolve it, but like the system in that time just got full of garbage, right? And so the city of Seattle actually sent a letter to the Liquor and Cannabis Board and said, "Hey, look, we need more locations. We want more locations."
Right.
And I was asking a member of a high-ranking official in the city of Seattle, and we were talking about it, and they responded, and I'm like, "Oh God, what did the response from the Liquor and Cannabis Board say?" And he's like, "Well, I can sum it up quite well by saying, F you."
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, no, it's dynamic out here, and it's a mess. I've never seen anything messier in my life.
Let me make sure I understand, though. Your submission is in officially. However, they have not granted you a license back yet. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
And the reason that you brought suit is because you do not have that license, even though you were basically the first person to submit, your paperwork.
Well, not only that. The legislature charged them with creating a merit-based system. You know me, this bugs me, because it's not just me. It's like, all my brethren here in the state. Like, what are they supposed to do? The Liquor and Cannabis Board was supposed to, it's RCW 69.50.331, Section 1, Paragraph A. The Liquor and Cannabis Board must create a competitive merit-based system that at a minimum allows applicants to demonstrate their experience and qualifications in the marijuana industry, right? It says that it is supposed to be a competitive merit-based system, but it has not, and these people that have no merit are taking spots from other people. So I had the suit in the can because I knew it needed to be there. And, because the system's full of garbage. Like, the new retailers are now making a claim that they were medical before, which it's demonstrable that they weren't. But they're getting, like, second locations, the new retailers, and, the medical people are not getting anything.
This is remarkable. Okay, so the timeline then from today, Friday, February 5th, is Monday. Supposedly, we're going to receive a letter. What do you do on Monday or after Monday?
Hang on 1 second. This might be an edit point. Okay, there you go. I had to make sure my app was up and running.
Yep.
Okay, ask me that one more time.
So let me understand the timeline. We are speaking Friday, February 5th, 2016. This letter comes out supposedly on Monday. If it does, what do you do on Monday or just after Monday? What is your timeline?
My timeline? I've already got a hearing date.
Oh, when's your hearing date?
Well, it's next Friday.
Aha.
So we'll be in a court asking for an injunction so that they stop what they're doing until they can figure out what the hell's going on at this point and how to fall into compliance. But honestly, it's such a mess. I don't know if I was the judge what I would recommend, because the damage is ongoing, but like in the city of Seattle, is the damage done to the point that an injunction might be meaningless because it's already so screwed up. Right. So those are the next steps I'm taking. I mean, of course, after the asking for injunction, there's other arguments to make, but I don't know how we unspool this thing. I think part of it is going to be clearly the cap that was issued by the Liquor and Cannabis Board was arbitrary, and that's part of my action, and it's not like I'm trying to be hostile, but part of my action is we have records of conversations between the Liquor and Cannabis Board and the entity that gave them the numbers, Botec, right, in which LCB is saying, hey, we think these numbers are completely arbitrary and not based on anything. But those are the numbers that they went with after them themselves saying they're completely arbitrary numbers. So I think that part of it is making sure that there's more brought in. There's more overall licenses, but that doesn't help if you still have a system that is, that's chock full of the artful, because if you add more, they'll just be gobbled up by the people that were quick and artful. It doesn't help the dispensers. No. So,
and it doesn't help the patients, and it doesn't help anybody. But that's besides the point, isn't it? Or isn't that exactly the point?
Well, and we got told the law that was passed basically makes unlicensed retail medical illegal as of July 1st. Right. So we got to try to unspool this by July 1st, because July 1st, a lot of people become an illegal entity. Right. Unless we can figure this out. So it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, I've not seen a system messier than how Washington's system currently is.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk to you on at least after the hearing on Friday, and I'd love to talk to you in between as well. But let's see how next week goes with at least one more conversation. How about that?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great.
Oh my God, John Davis. All right, well, keep your head on straight. Say it again.
We're living the dream out here,
Living the dream. That's exactly. Listen, keep your feet to the ground and your what was it? How does it go? Keep reaching for keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. I think that was the Casey Kasem situation back in the day. But yeah, keep living the dream, John.
Okay.
I'll talk to you very soon.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
And that was February 5th. It turned out to be a little bit later on, March 29th, when we got a chance to catch up with John again. This storyline is truly remarkable. So That was February 5th. This is March 29th. Here's part 2 of part 3. We are trying to go ahead and kind of piece together this story as it goes, and we might, after this conversation, go ahead and put this one up, combined with the last one. The last conversation, of course, was before the hearing. You had a first hearing, and then you had a second hearing. So kind of catch us up to where you are as NWPRC in Washington State, I guess in Seattle right now.
Right. So we have went to court, met with the judge, and we're trying to get the date of the big hearing to be as soon as possible, because
Right.
we've got some time constraints. I mean, the law for medical that allows for what we're doing now ends on July 1st. So we did get a date of June 3rd.
Okay,
And
that
we're-
is before July 1st, not too far before July 1st.
Yeah, but it's before July 1st. And
Right.
for that, I'm thankful,
Okay.
because we have to, have some time to transition, assuming we'll win. But I've got high confidence that we'll win, because, we follow the letter of the law here.
Right.
And they didn't even follow their own rules. So, it's a process. It's cannabis. Everything in cannabis is more difficult than any other business. So
Sure.
we'll just keep fighting through it. I mean, hell, we've been around for, going on 8 years. So it's not like we're not accustomed to fighting for survival.
Indeed, and you're there at NWPRC right now. I can hear business going on behind you.
Yep.
As far as a win is concerned, how would you define that? What would that be?
Well, I think for me it's just to have my clarity of licenses, right? To have my 2 stores, and I applied in Spokane. I'd like 3 licenses coming away. Whether or not I'll ask for damages remains to be seen, and depends on a lot of things, but we have till June 3rd. But we just want to continue business. I've got employees, and the whole thing, and leases and obligations, and we've been doing it this whole time, and been an example, and been working with all these agencies, including the Liquor and Cannabis Board. They just didn't listen to us.
Right.
And so we just want to continue to go on being a business, because I'm a big believer that nobody should be in jail for cannabis, and I've also been an advocate for patients' rights in cannabis therapy, and so I do want to be able to transition so that I can sell to anyone 21 and over, but I also want to keep the bones in place of where our heritage is and what my people are trained in, and how to deal with medical cannabis and patients and everything. I want it to be more of a wellness center, and to go in that direction, where a lot of people out here that are new are just kind of opening, pot shops.
Sure.
And they have sativa and indica, and what else do you need? There you go.
What else could you possibly need?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So we're kind of talking about 2 things at the same time. One is this specific issue that you're dealing with. You're a priority 1 guy. Maybe take us through one more time on that and the 3 licenses that you're kind of defending in court. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, sure. The license, or the law that was passed is 5052 that was passed in 2015, and on that, it says in Section 6, which is codified now, RCW 69.50.331, subsection 1, paragraph A, actually, that says that, that medical is to be prioritized. It says that competitive applicants are to be judged on their experience and qualifications in the cannabis industry, right?
Right.
So what the whole intent of the law is, and by the way, it's called the Patient Protection Act. It's not the Give Recreational People Another Store Act.
Right.
It's supposed to transition and combine medical and recreational.
Right.
Which is what it doesn't do in application. In application, basically, people were able to scam the Liquor and Cannabis Board by just cobbling together entities, finding someone that maybe has some merit or lying about some merit. And giving someone a piece of the company. So there's all this scamming going on where people are cobbling together these entities, these Frankenstein entities to get priority one. And they're competing against the real, entities that have been around forever.
Like you said, 8 years, which is forever in this industry.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, and so as far as your priority one, obviously there's competition there. As far as what you can accomplish June 1st is basically continuing to do business as usual. What is the worst case scenario?
Well, the worst case scenario is I lose, and after July 1st, it becomes illegal to do what I do, right?
How could that be possible 8 years later?
Well, because the LCB is a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies, they don't care. They just want to, spend 8 hours in the office, go home, and they have a hobby. They do ships in a bottle or something. There's no real caring about the process, and they're pretty cavalier about it. It's like, well, you could sue us. The attorney general is our lawyer, and we don't pay for it. So,
right.
So it's just it's a lack of caring about. And understanding, I think, but mostly a lack of caring about, medical, what it is. And there's a big, I think there's a general thought in the agency. It's like, well, hey, patients need access to cannabis, and cannabis stores sell cannabis, so awesome. So whatever stores open are going to serve the patients, right? Whereas they don't understand, the relationships that we have with the patients, the type of products that we demand that we get in, so that we have them available, so that we're advocating for people to have different choices on how they can use cannabis therapeutically.
Right.
So it's a number of things. I mean, this whole notion of legalization, it doesn't come without headaches, and
yeah, certainly.
You're in New York, it's coming to you too, and there'll be headaches there as
sure.
well.
Oh, sure.
I mean, there's
Absolutely.
headaches now. There's no patients.
Without question, exactly, and very few licenses. But getting back to Washington, as far as what you're dealing with, there's nuance there, because one side of the argument is everyone's a patient. Okay, fine, but all patients are not created equal. And specific patients have specific needs and need to be serviced by people that are trained to do so. So if I walk in with Crohn's and I've been taking cannabis to medicate for the past 3 years, or at least 1 year, I need, a bud tender, if you will, that understands what's happening with me, and not simply here's cannabis. Here's sativa indica. What else could you possibly need?
Exactly.
That's the nuance
there's
that
pot.
kind of we're talking
Here's
about.
pot.
Yeah.
But there is the nuance, and we've always been cutting edge. When I founded this Northwest Patient Resource Center, which Northwest Patient Resource Center is 5 years old in 2 weeks from this venture. But I founded this to be cutting edge. We don't follow, we lead. And so the training here is it's actually pretty intense. And my people that have learned and have had long interactions take the lead in training new people that come in. And it really is, I mean, you've got to understand that you don't know what's going to come in the door next. And often we have people that are at the end of their life. And that's not easy. I mean, it can be an emotionally draining experience. I mean, because these people are going to die, right? And you need to know how to give them the best advice that you can without making medical claims, because it's still illegal to make medical claims. So you have to rely on your experience with other people. But like, as you say, with Crohn's is going to be a completely different thing. But the thing about it is, you need to get curious, which the new recreational, they don't care. Pick something and go. But it's like, you have to get curious. Okay, have you used cannabis before? And has it helped you? What types of products have you used? What has been helpful? And then to be able to say, look, the other people that have shared with me that they have Crohn's, because you can't ask them what their condition is. They have to share it with you. Those people that I've worked with tend to gravitate towards this application. They have told me that they use X amount therapeutically, and to really, and then to get to know your customer. So when they come in, and we can make notes, but again, you have to be trained in how to make notes. So when a patient comes in, we pull up their file, and we can see if there's notes in it. But like, you can't, as I say, you can't ask them what their condition is. You can't make medical claims. You can keep track of what it is that they're using. If they want to share with you dosage, the notes of their therapy, but you have to make sure that they're cool with that, because you're keeping it, as a record. So there's lots to know. And I've talked to many of the recreational people, and they're like, look, why would we even take on that liability?
Right. The continuing saga of Washington State, as told to you through John Davis, who is bearing with it. So wanted to make sure to put this up while the content was still in real time. We'll certainly check back in with John after the court date. We are fully behind John, and all the best to him. John, thanks for the interview. Looking forward to talking to you soon.